Ready?
Yeah, looking sharp.
Okay. We'll call the meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, July 2nd, 2018. I would just like to remind everyone to silence cell phones or any other electronic devices to keep any kind of disruptions to a minimum. Roll call.
Janser,
Here.
Olson, Pittner,
Here.
Straight,
Here.
Wolski,
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 3 on our agenda tonight is the approval of minutes. Yes, Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move 3 and 4.
We have a motion to move 3 and 4.
Second.
Second by Alderman Straight. Any discussion? Any discussion? Call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. That takes us to number 5, a public hearing.
A public hearing to consider a request from Timothy Braun to relocate a detached garage from 1122 West University Avenue, also known as Emily Subdivision Lot 1 and Port Lot 3, Block 20, West Minot Addition Lot 1, to 1004 Jefferson Drive, also known as Randall's Addition Lot 23. It's Committee of the Whole item number 6.
All right, do we have anyone from the audience that wants to comment on this public hearing? Anyone from the audience, any public comment? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move we close public hearing and approve the item.
Motion from Janser. Second. Second from Alderman Wolski. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Number 6 is another public hearing.
A public hearing to consider a request from Devin Mance to relocate the single-family residence from 2708 14th Avenue Southwest, also known as Outlots Section 27-155-83, Outlot 1, west 336.7 feet of east 512.7 feet, southwest northwest to 7100 28th Avenue Southeast, also known as Outlot 18-155-83, pending approval and the recording of the plat. Outlot 1, Committee of the Whole item number 336.7
Anyone wish to
feet
comment
of east
on the public hearing?
512.7 feet, southwest
comment?
northwest to 7100
Seeing
28th
none, I
Avenue
would
Southeast,
entertain a
also
motion.
known as Outlot 18-155-83, pending approval and the
Straight.
recording of the
Mr. Mayor, I'd
Outlot
close the
1, Committee
public
of the Whole
hearing
item number
and recommend
36.7
Anyone wish to
feet
comment
of east
on the public hearing?
512.7
Motion
feet,
by Straight.
southwest northwest
Second, Alderman Janser.
to
Any discussion?
7100
Seeing
28th
none, I
Avenue
would
Southeast,
entertain a
also
motion.
known as Outlot 18-155-83, pending approval
Alderman
and the
Straight. Call the
recording
roll.
of
Mr. Mayor, I'd
Outlot
close
1,
the
Committee
public
of the Whole
hearing
item number
and recommend.
36.7
Anyone wish to
feet
comment
of
yes
east
on the public hearing?
512.7
Motion
feet,
by Straight.
southwest
Any,
northwest
that takes us to
Janser.
number 7 for
7100
discussion hearings.
28th
And this
Avenue
is
Southeast,
the
also known as
part
Outlot
of the council meeting
18-155-83,
where if anyone has
pending
any
approval
item
and
to
the recording of
address
Outlot
that is not on our agenda tonight, this is your opportunity to come forward to the podium.
Yes.
State your name and
Southwest,
address.
northwest,
That takes us to number 7 for
7100
discussion hearings.
28th
And this
Avenue
is the
Southeast,
part
Outlot
of the council meeting where if
18-155-83,
anyone has
pending
any
approval
item
and
to
the recording of
address
Outlot
that is not on our agenda tonight, this is your opportunity to come forward to the podium. State your name and address. We'll move on to number 7 for discussion hearings. And this is the part of the council meeting where if anyone has any item to go ahead and just touch on a little bit of what has happened tonight, this is your opportunity to come forward to the podium. But I did want to take your name and address. We'll move on to number 7 for discussion hearings. And this is the part of the council meeting less than a week. If anyone has any item to go ahead and just touch on a little bit of So just taking a look at some of the activities on June 13th, all right, have to get green space to number 7. Just go if you want to have some agriculture budget questions, just touch on 15. So just taking a look at some of the activities on June 13th, all right, have to get green space to number 7. Just go if you want to have some agriculture budget questions, just touch on 15. So just taking a look at some of the activities on June 13th, all right, have to get green space to number 7.
flood. This effort was to remind citizens and newcomers to our community about how high the water actually got in the 2011 flood. This activity as an education piece also allows us to apply for community rating system points, which, as you know, if you get enough points, that impacts the flood insurance premiums to our community. So this will go towards the point system and allow us to continue to work on improved flood insurance premiums as we go forward. These signs are all across the city. These are the locations in and around where we put these signs. All signs have been installed except for the one over at the Bark Park, and of course that's because that area is under heavy construction at this point in time. And as soon as we can button that up, which may be for some time though, we'll put the sign up there as well so that we have some presence in that area. Just wanted to update you. I met with the Source River Joint Board within the last month or so to talk about the flood control project for the city. We've noticed a couple things that we just want to have a conversation about with them, and that is the pace of the project. While things are accelerating very nicely, in fact, things are going quite well with the projects. You're already aware of the bids that came in below engineer's estimate, which is nice. Some of that acceleration we're seeing churning through the finances a little bit more quickly than we'd anticipated. On the left here of the screen, you'll see the FY18 CIP and what the predictions were for expenditures against the new estimates. And you can see that we're running about $31 to $32 million ahead in the financing piece. That's going to have some impacts based on our financial models. And so I brought that to the attention of the Source River Joint Board and also talk with them about the local share of funding and a need for us to work more aggressively to increase the amount of local share, and in particular local share from other jurisdictions. And then finally, local contracts and who's holding the contracts and who's going to own the infrastructure, and those kinds of things are also things that are important to discuss. So securing the state funding, the Source River Joint Board has done a very nice job with it. They've done a great job with the whole project, in fact. But there are some things that we do want to work through as it relates to some logistical components, and that being predominantly the financing piece. So while I was there, I talked with them about recommending a meeting between our City Council and the Source River Joint Board to maybe get a better handle and have a free discussion between those officials and yourself and hammer out some of these details and kind of ensure that we're all on the same page as we move forward. So that would be my recommendation to you for your consideration going forward, is to meet with the Source River Joint Board at some meeting in the future. Home Sweet Home is finally, I shouldn't say finally relocated, it's the first of two moves. It has been moved generally across the street now and is awaiting its foundation, and then once the foundation is poured and cured, then the last steps, of course, to move the home back onto the foundation and then go about the restoration process. We did have to extend the timeline a few times due to some utility conflicts, also in addition to some rain, unexpected rain, which saturated the soil, and in addition to some contractor work that had been going in and around the area for the flood control projects. There is much more detail about those circumstances and whatnot in the document that I've put on your desk here on NDR. So not just Home Sweet Home, but a number of other projects are in here as well. And I'll just take a quick moment. It's not in the slide, but we did have Housing and Urban Development staff meet with us just this past week or so. And we had a very nice visit. They were here on a technical assistance visit for about a day and a half or so. We had the assistant director and also our grant program lead from HUD out of Denver join us, and we had great conversation about a number of different things. And so we're looking forward to continuing to advance our work with their assistance and whatnot. So some of that's also included in regards to updates on your form as well. As you know, we're deep into the budget. We have been making significant progress on the development of our budget. You'll know because you attended three budget workshops we had this year. We appreciate very much your time and attention on those. What's happening right now is that we're meeting with the department heads. Most of that work's been done, but we still have a few department heads to meet with to go through their budgets. And finally then refine each of those budgets and put it into a consolidated budget at which point then we'll review it one last time and scrub it, and that'll become the preliminary budget, which we'll present to you on August the 6th. So that is our deadline. From that, you'll have a number of weeks to go through and review the budget, and then we'll have a question and answer period whereby you can ask us anything about the budget or give us additional direction or whatnot. That'll occur on August the 28th. The President's budget or message about the budget is going to be due on September 4th. The first hearing is scheduled for September 18th, with the final budget hearing on September 25th. So that's kind of the process by which we're operating under at this point in time. The International Economic Development Council, you might recall, visited with us in our community a number of months ago, and their final report is out. Thanks to Mr. Zakian, he's put together sort of an executive summary, which is a nice quick read as it relates to what was dominating the report in significance. Some of the main findings include what's on the slide here. There needs to be a major focus on strategy. We need to move to active and proactive leadership instead of reactive leadership, and I can second that. That's very frustrating. And then, of course, eliminating community silos, and even silos within organizations, like the city, for example. So these are not necessarily surprises to us, but they reaffirm some of the preliminary and discussions that we've had internally when we look critically at our own organization. Some of the strengths, and there were several, some of the three greatest strengths are that our community is ripe for growth, that we are a regional destination, and that we do have a diverse economy. So very good things. Our weaknesses include some areas focused on the downtown. That downtown closes early. It's essentially something that's been brought up by many folks in our community, and certainly the governor brought that up in his summit that he had earlier this year for not just Minot, but for, of course, downtowns across the state. Organizational fragmentation is also a weakness, and that's at a number of different organizations and a number of different levels within inside organizations. And then there's a lack of single leadership downtown, and that's something also that we've been aware of, but we want to make sure that we get time and attention on improving. Now, these aren't the only takeaways. There's a number of important and meaningful takeaways. I've just kind of picked 9 of the highlights for you. I encourage you to certainly review the Economic Resiliency Strategies Executive Summary. For those in the audience, we have copies of all these documents sitting up here on the table if you'd like to grab one. And certainly the primary document in the unedited format is a good read as well. Okay, up next, wanted to talk a little bit about council orientation. This is something that I've struggled with a little bit in regards to finding time. And we were struggling a little bit because we didn't know how many new council members would be elected that we might have to orient. And so based on being completed with the election, and Alderman Pittler is our only newest council member, I've sat with him for, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours this afternoon. We went through a orientation of sorts today. And of course, we may need to meet again depending upon how much maybe you retain and how many more questions you might have or whatnot. But essentially, I'm not planning to hold a widespread, formal council orientation at this point. All the rest of you are sort of seasoned professionals right now. But if you do have questions or concerns, please reach out to me. I'd love to meet with you and talk more about any questions you might have. Additionally, I will refer you to the Council Orientation Handbook that you were all given last year. It has been updated, but not significantly, so your handbook from last year is pretty well, other than some name changes and things, pretty well in good order. So that's always a good source document for you. I think I mentioned this in the important dates, but the Taxation Committee has invited me back to come and visit with them next week to talk a little bit more about taxes and tax finances, debt, and debt servicing, and those types of things. So I'll be headed down to do that again later in the week, next week. And then we'll be meeting with the Energy Development and Transmission Committee shortly before, to talk about the Hub City funding. As you know, we've been arguing for some time that not only is Minot a hub city, but that we've been heavily impacted by oil and gas, and we'd like to see a change in the formula. This seems to be fairly widely supported by the other jurisdictions that are involved, and so we're working collaboratively with those jurisdictions to come up with a funding formula that is reasonable, defensible, and as best as it can be fair and equitable for all the organizations that are impacted. With that, I wanted to take the opportunity with the change in leadership and certainly the change in council after the election to make a recommendation for you. And I'd like to get your feedback on this. I've already talked with the staff about this. There seems to be a lot. I mean, obviously, my city manager reports, I can only get to you about maybe 10 to 20 minutes worth of information over the month that's gone on about things. And I don't do justice to each of the departments who have enormous, wonderful things that are going on that you should know more about. So I would like to recommend that department heads visit with you during the committee of the whole meetings and provide you a 10-minute or so, maybe 15-minute briefing on what it is they're actually been working on, what their accomplishments are, and what their challenges are. These conversations I envision to be at a high level, to not get in the weeds, but to just get you some better familiarity with what's going on in each of the departments at those department levels. The hope is to not sort of clog up city council meetings with that information, but instead provide it during the committee of the whole meetings. And the idea is to have one or two departments meet with you at each of the committee of the whole meetings, not every single department, right? So that way we kind of meter it out. We get one department essentially in front of you about once every 9 to 10 months or so. So I would love your feedback when I'm finished here or now if you have it in regards to advancing this initiative. I think it would be helpful for the community to know what's going on at a much deeper level inside our organization, and certainly for you as well, because you are inundated constantly with information. And it would give you an opportunity to ask questions of the department heads in and around what it is they're doing and why things are the way they are and those sorts of things. So that's the recommendation there for your consideration. I did want to touch quickly on the South Dakota versus Wayfair Supreme Court ruling. This is great news for North Dakota, and I do have to say I'm very impressed with our state legislature because they preemptively developed state code that sort of hoped or maybe foresaw this ruling, and because of that positions the state to collect on these sales taxes from online purchases very, very quickly. Now what that will do to us, of course, because of the ruling at the states, or excuse me, at the Supreme Court, that'll allow for the state to collect sales taxes, which will increase state aid back to the city. But it'll also allow us, hopefully, to collect sales taxes from our local sales tax, and that we also expect to increase revenues too. So some of that's being, a little bit more discussed and worked out. There is nothing for us to do at this point in time as it relates to getting involved. The state's taking the lead on this, and there is a mandate to have all of these collections take place by October 1st of this year. Many of the big retailers have already started to comply earlier than that, so we're already starting to see sales tax revenues at the state level be collected, which is great news for us. So again, one of those things we talked about in our budget workshops, that maybe this will have an impact positively on the revenue streams for us, and that is the expectation at this point, but we don't know exactly what that means in regards to how much revenue. So we're following that closely. I wanted to update you on the Community Development Director position and sort of just a general planning department update. It's been a few months since I've talked with you about this. We did conduct a national search for some time to look for candidates for the Community Development Director position. There were a number of candidates that applied. Those candidate lists were weeded down to around 9, which then was weeded to 5, which was then weeded down to 3. So mid-July or so, we'll be bringing in the top 3 candidates and conducting panelist interviews with them. We'll also take them on a tour, and then finally I'll have an interview with them as well. So we do hope that hopefully by the end of this month we'll be able to announce potentially who it is that we're interested in if the process goes well, or alternatively we may need to come back with you and make a different recommendation. But that's the hope at this point. We are grateful for Prothman's help, which is a national search firm who have helped us essentially put this list together and do the preliminary screening. So, in the planning department, in the interim, we have been running very, very lean. We've had a number of important positions in the planning department that have been and remained vacant. I do want to give a great big shout out to Lance Lang, who has been acting as our interim planning director, along with the help of Lance Meyer, who's been dealing a lot with the administrative activities. Both of them have done a fine job in helping to keep the planning department intact during this time period. We have some good news. We did hire an administrative assistant because our administrative assistant did leave the city at the 1st of June or so. And she's being trained up, or will be trained up here pretty quick. And we also have an intern that joined us for a couple months out of, I think, California Polytech, if I'm not mistaken. And she'll be here for 2-3 months as well. So we have just the director position and the assistant planner position to fill. And once we do that, we'll be fully staffed in the planning department. So want to thank again the leadership of both Lance Meyer and Lance Lang, as well as the patience of the community in their applications and interactions with the planning department as well. One bit of good news, I know during the election there was a lot of discussion about automation and improvements for software and so on and so forth. And it's not all doom and gloom. We have been making improvements where we can. We have initiated, as of mid-month last month, the automated vehicle locator system. This provides GPS mapping of the exact location of emergency vehicles throughout the community and allows us to do essentially proximity-based dispatching. So that way we know where a car is, we know where the incident is, and we can match the two up if possible. Also, it's a safety enhancement to the city because it allows for a non-responsive emergency vehicle to be identified in its location, and in the event we need to send backup or send help, we'll know exactly where that vehicle is. So this is another great advancement for our community. This is being utilized by not just our own dispatch office, but fire and police department, ward, county, and community ambulance. So they're all talking to one another now, which is really great. And they talked with one another before, but this way they can do it graphically on a GIS map. So that's pretty interesting. With that, I'll stop for questions that you might have. I'll encourage, I didn't touch on anything on construction-related activities. That's because it's in your pamphlet here. I'll just save the time of council and just refer you back to that document. So that's all I have for now, unless you have questions for me.
Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Barney, or Mayor Sitma, apologies.
Old habits are hard to break.
I guess so. Mr. Barry, I just wanted to touch on a couple things. One, I greatly appreciate everybody's work on the high water initiative. I know that goes back even to our Vista volunteers before they left us early in the year. That's an idea that's been floated around town since going back to 2011. And I know the flood is at times very difficult to remember, but it's an event that we can't forget. And these signs, I think, are an appropriate way to keep the threat relevant in our minds. So I just wanted to share that. I also appreciate the recommendation to develop a department head report. I think these meetings are a great opportunity for us to share the city's operations. So with that in mind, I would move the city manager's recommendation that we add 2 monthly department head reports to the committee of the whole meetings.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Wolski, second by Straight on this. Any discussion from the council? I don't know if we would need a motion on this, but seeing as it's been up there, we'll move forward with it. If not, call the roll.
Wolski?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yes.
Anything further, Mr. Wolski? If not, I'll just take a moment here as well to recognize the High Water Initiative. If many of us remember looking out these windows 7 years ago, this week that water would have been flowing right down on the levee that was protecting the library and Broadway, and I personally placed that high water mark myself on the corner of 4th Avenue and 7th Street Northwest in August of 2011, and I had told Lance Meyer that if I have to pay for it myself, I'll buy one of those signs in a standard and have them put it up back in the corner back there. But I can't say thank you enough, and I think even looking farther down the road as we get flood control built in some of the main areas, potentially a monument that I think is long overdue, but also in the light of all of the financial situations that we've run through, we can certainly explore that to private funding down the road. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Mayor Sitma. Mr. Berry, I just wanted to comment a little bit about the attendance at SRJB. I appreciate the job you have to do. I appreciate Mr. Jonason's work over the last couple of years. It might be an emotional response for me, and that's why I'm going to be very supportive moving forward at trying to get our delegation here to meet and talk in advance of possibly meeting with the SRJB. I'll tell you from my 2 years of taking time out of my day to go to Bismarck, to listen to the State Water Commission, to be present for the City of Minot, I'm concerned about some growing tension there, and I'm also concerned about the communication of those of us that have been at those meetings for a couple of years and had to add comment. And I recognize on a statewide level that there's been a lot of fracturing on the east side of the state. And for those of us that, yes, the City of Minot is paying a large share, we've been very supportive of the basin-wide concept. I think we want to continue to be. I think we recognize the huge financial challenges ahead, but I'm mindful also of the tension that grows and the appearance of these guys are saying one thing, here we are talking about something else. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, and that we have to kind of strike not just the delicate balance, but we have to be educated. Mr. Pittner's got to get up to speed on it as well, and we have to meet with those folks to provide a very thoughtful discussion moving forward, because as you know, Tom, I live on the east side of Minot, and we don't want to have any holdups to the plan. So I appreciate your hard work on that. I just wanted to bring that sentiment forward. So thanks.
Any further questions for City Manager? Thank you, Tom.
Great, thank you.
Number 9 on our agenda tonight is the attorney report.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me. Mr. Mayor and members of council, I submitted a written report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the attorney? Thank you. That takes us to number 10, the report of the Planning Commission. They had 2 items on their agenda this week.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move both items.
Moved by Janser. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Straight. So with the motion to pass 1 and 2, that means they'll pass in consent, and unless anybody from the audience wants one of the items pulled, we will pass them in the motion provided by Alderman Janser. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. To number 11, consider the report of the Committee of the Whole. We had 30 items on our agenda from Committee of the Whole. Number 6 and 7 were taken care of with the public hearing, and I've been asked to pull number 20 and number 30. Are there any items that we would want pulled? If not, I would entertain a motion. Alderman
Mayor,
Johnson.
I would move consent on the rest of the items.
Motion by Alderman Janser.
Second.
Second by Straight. Again, what that means, ladies and gentlemen, we will be passing consent on all items. 6 and 7 have already been taken care of. We will be passing all items, but number 20 and number 30 talking about individually. Is there anyone from the audience that would like another item that is on the agenda discussed tonight before we vote on them? Any discussion from the council? Call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Number 20 is the bid approval of 3125-2D, the Swift Action D culvert deficiency repair.
I'd move the item.
Moved by Walski,
Second.
second by Straight. Mr. Walski.
Mayor Sitma, I have a couple of questions on this. This was one of the agenda items that I didn't get as good a chance to look at last week for committee. I see Mr. Jonason stepping up. I figured he would. Dan, there's kind of a not your standard approach to this one anyway. Let's just call it that. And depending on what happens with the Water Commission, we're going to be perhaps pulling out some parts of this project. First of all, what part of town are exactly we talking about here? I guess I didn't see a map out of the work on this one. And then how do you go about picking which parts of this project get removed if we have to pull out, you know, maybe as much as a $700,000 or $800,000 chunk of work on this?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Walski, the work starts over at the Oak Park area and follows all along the river. There's different culverts and places along the entire reach, all the way down to 27th Street Southeast for different areas. There's, I believe, 22 different locations where work is being done. What we would do is remove items. Some of the items are eligible for cost share from the State Water Commission. Some of them are ineligible, so whether we do them now or later, regardless, we're going to have to absorb the entire cost. The one large one is over at 3rd Avenue and 4th Street. It's about a $750,000 item with the gate well closure and everything that would go in there. That is a State Water Commission eligible one, so that would be the first one we'd look at. And then we have another larger one, I believe over near the Nubbin Park area, that we would take a look at deferring if we don't get the funding from the State Water Commission. Typically on a project like this, the State Water Commissions have the funding. It hasn't been an issue. When I was at their meeting on the 14th and asked for funds, they didn't have the funding available at that time. However, after the meeting, I should say they reallocated some funds that we didn't use under SWIFT-C towards this so that we could put towards it. And after the meeting, they came up to me and they said, we may have some more funds available that could help fund the rest of this. We'll know more in August at our meeting then. So if you could award based on that, we would certainly consider this their priority for additional funding if it comes up. So yes, it is a unique situation, one I've never had to deal with before, because typically the funding's always been there from the State Water Commission.
Yes.
The bid contracts, they do provide us with this flexibility?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Walski, yes, we talked to the contractor and asked him if he would be okay with this approach, and he said he would be.
Okay.
Continuation.
Just one final comment here. I noticed that our local share funding on this is coming out of our sales tax for flood protection. I've raised this concern in the past. Again, we have the contractual obligation with the SRJB, and so I want to make sure that obviously this wouldn't be coming out of the 50% requirement. I know we've allocated some funds above and beyond that, but I just want to be continually persistent that we're meeting those obligations with the SRJB. So,
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Walski, the funds that we have available for this is carryover from funds previously allocated to this. So it's not new sales tax dollars, it's dollars we already have for SWIFT, set aside for SWIFT.
okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Jonason? Thank you, Dan. Any further comments or discussion? Call the roll.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Straight.
Yes.
That takes us to number 30, the purchase of number 416 Northwest 2nd Avenue. This is again public or Committee of the Works, Committee of the Whole, number 30. I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Walski.
Mayor Barney, I'd move Jeez, twice. Don't call on me again. Mayor Sitma, I would move the city council support the recommended counter offer of roughly $1,200 or something like that. I think whatever's in the staff recommendation.
I think it was about 1216. So motion by Alderman Wolski,
Second.
second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion? Alderman Wolski.
Yeah. From my understanding on this, the property is a possible, maybe even probable need regarding flood protection, with some plans in flux around the Maple diversion. With that being the case, I think it's prudent to acquire the property and get it clear, and the amount is not unreasonable, I think, in any way. As I thought about this over the weekend, I think there's some work we need to do, and I think the work probably rests very much with us as council members in terms of being maybe even lobbyists in a sense for the citizens of Minot. I occasionally get the feeling that we as citizens in Minot are not represented as well as I would like to see us represented in Ward County. But I think that responsibility lies on us for us to make our case that the citizens of Minot are an important part of the county's operations, and we want to work together. We want to deliver this project collaboratively, and we want the best for all the citizens of Ward County and the city of Minot. So,
Thank you, Alderman Wolski. Is there any other comments or discussion? City Manager Barry.
Thank you, Mayor Sitma. We would just like to have clarification on the motion.
Kind of figured you would.
Thank you for that. The recommendation from staff was to move for discussion, but if you are willing to approve the purchase, then we'd just like to have the motion clarified that you are willing to approve the purchase under the terms and conditions proposed in the counter offer from the county.
And that was the intent of the motion, that we approve the purchase based on the counteroffer conditions.
Does the second agree?
That's how I understood it, yes.
Great,
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager Barry. Any further discussion on the item? Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Straight.
Yes.
That takes us to number 12, the ordinances on second reading. We have 3 different ordinances. Do we need to read these individually, or can we make a motion and consent? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move the list.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Janser,
Second.
second by Alderman Wolski. Any discussion on the 3 different ordinances that will be passed in consent? Any discussion from the audience? Any discussion from the alderman? Please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm, in reading the first 5298, the ordinance changing an ag residential district to a manufactured home district, I apologize, this is the second reading of this, but I guess I was curious just in terms of our desire in building a resilient community and the infrastructure for this, for where it's going to be located, what the ongoing costs might be from the city. I'm going to vote no tonight on this just because I feel I need some better clarification from staff.
Would you like the first one pulled?
If you would pull that, please, sure. Thank you.
So we will be voting on ordinance on the second reading for ordinance number 2 and 3. Any discussion on number 2 or 3? Call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. That takes us to number 1, ordinance on the second reading. This is ordinance number 5298, the rezoning of Outlot 19, section 34-155-82 from residential agricultural to manufactured home.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Wolski. Motion made by Walsky, second by Janser. Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is Mr. Meyer here tonight? He might be gone. Thanks, Lance. I apologize for not catching this sooner, but I just wanted to reach out. Can you, if you know off the top of your head where this is located, or do we have all city services near to this location? I guess I'm just curious on a couple of fronts what you might know.
And I think
I'm going to phone a friend.
we'll call the other Lance.
There was the two, there was like a manufactured house existing?
Yeah, 72nd Street?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me. Mr. Mayor, Alderman Straight, this particular outlot plat is outside city limits by quite a ways. It's in the 2 mile. There's an existing structure and they're replatting it into 2. We just approved the moving on the other outlot next to this one.
Okay.
So there are no city services. It's served by North Prairie Rural Water and it's adjacent to a county road. County road, excuse me.
Okay.
There's an existing manufactured home on there, so we're just changing the zoning to match.
Right.
Okay, I'll take my questions to the county then. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you, Lance. Any further discussion on the ordinance on second reading? Call the roll.
Wolski?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Straight?
No.
Number 13 is administrative approvals, and I think all of those were attached in the packet. And if anyone has any questions, if not, I would entertain a motion. Alderman Janser.
I move we ratify the staff approvals.
Second.
Motion by Janser, second by Alderman Walsky. Any discussion on the administrative approvals? Any discussion from the audience? Any discussion? Call the roll.
Janser?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes.
Wolski?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes. And that takes us to number 14, which is other business. I did ask to have one item put under other business tonight, and it is the consolidation of public services. Ahead of the IEDC report, I think a great many discussions have been held over a number of years about taking a look at the potential for consolidation in a couple of different areas, and the potential to maximize, I think, the taxpayer dollars and also maximize the output of potentially some of the different services that could be seen as duplication. And the first one of those that I wanted to address actually was the committee that is taking a look at the Ward County Library and the Minot Public Library. And I guess in the big scope of openness and transparency and open discussions, I figured it would be appropriate to appoint that committee to put the validation so that a recommendation can be brought forward to the body if any recommendation is being made. So I've got a couple of these tonight. First one on the library is going to be chaired by, I believe, Lisa Olson, Alderman Olson, and then we also do have Ryan Ackerman as a Minot Library Board member, Jim Rosted, Ward County Commission, City Manager Barry, the 2 directors from the libraries themselves, and then Deb Fesky, Ward County. I believe she is is she public library or is she county library? Minot Library, thank you. And if I'm missing anyone from that, I see Mr. Ackerman in the audience here, so I'm looking for him if I'm missing anyone.
Mr. Mayor, I might recommend Commissioner Jim Rosted to that group as well. From Ward County.
If I skip Mr. Rosted, I apologize. So we will make sure that Mr. Rosted is on our list as well. So that's my first recommendation of an appointed committee for the exploration of the consolidation of services between Ward County Library and the Minot Public Library at this time. I would entertain a motion to move that.
So moved.
Moved by Walsky.
Second.
Second by Straight. Any discussion? Mr. Walsky.
Mayor Sitma, got it right.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
Third time's the charm.
Vote for. I assume this conversation has been started at the individual level. Members of the county commission, members of the Ward County Library are aware that this is coming at them. We're not surprising anybody tonight.
Alderman Walski, is my understanding, an initial meeting has already taken place at their own doing. And so all parties involved right now are very amicably coming together and having that discussion. So this is more so just formalizing that a recommendation can be brought forth, not only to this body, but to the county body as well, if and when any recommendation does come from the group.
I appreciate hearing that. I know this issue has been taken up in the past. It's sometimes maybe even been a bit contentious. But I think as we look forward to challenging budgets for the city, for the county, for all the political subdivisions, it is going to be opportunities like this that I think we're going to have to work hard to find the savings, the ways to do one job with one staff instead of two jobs with two staff members from different organizations. And so I look forward to hearing the recommendations of the committee, and I think we're going to have to look for a lot more of these types of collaborative efforts in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alderman Walski. Any discussion on this recommendation? Please call the roll.
Wolski?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes.
And I do have one last item that I want to also address here with the potential consolidation of services, and that is the discussion between the Minot Park District and the City of Minot for potentially consolidating Parks and Rec under one umbrella. Taking a look at those high-level conversations, I've had on and off conversations over the last couple of years. I know former Mayor Barney had made this a point as well to take a look at this actual area of consolidation, and I think it's been ripe with discussion throughout the community. So it would be my recommendation tonight, with approval of the council tonight, that myself, City Manager Barry, the department heads with Mr. Ron Merritt from the Minot Park District, and Scott from our Recreation, Mr. Scott Collins from our Recreation Department, as well as a Park Board member, Perry Olson, I believe, to start those discussions at a high level, bringing what could potentially be a recommendation down the road to this body and to the Park Board as well. So I would entertain a motion on that. Alderman Straight.
Mayor Sitma, I would move your committee recommendation to begin discussions on consolidating Minot Park districts and the Minot Rec Commission with your formation of the committee.
Moved by Straight.
Second.
Second by Alderman Walski. Any discussion on this issue? Alderman Pittner.
Mayor Sitma, since I've been appointed to the rec subcommittee, I would enjoy the opportunity to sit in on those meetings if you would have me.
Absolutely. That is probably my oversight, Alderman Pittner. My apologies. So if that's agreeable to the first and second, we would include Alderman Pittner on that discussion as well.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Any further discussion? Alderman Straight.
Great. Let's move forward. I think for all of us who live in the community, to Alderman Walski's point previously, we're all taxpayers of Ward County, Minot Park District, Minot School Board. I think anytime that we can have a conversation that's open and transparent and talking about more efficient ways to save on all of our tax dollars, I think the public is going to be supportive of that. And I think in a lot of regards, they're wondering, what took you guys so long? So let's get to work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Alderman Straight. Any further discussion? If not, I'll just make the last comment that, again, to Alderman Walski's previous comments, this is, again, from both sides coming together on an amicable playing field, so to speak, for these discussions to take place. So I'm very much looking forward to those, along with city staff and park staff, and as well as the committee members down the road on that, and hopefully can make quick progress on any potential consolidations. Any last discussion before we vote? Call the roll, please.
Straight?
Yes.
Wolski?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Any other business to come under other business tonight before we move for adjournment?
Mayor Sitma,
Alderman Walsky.
I move adjournment.
We have motion to adjourn and second by Alderman Straight. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.